Okay. Hey everyone. I want to thank y'all for coming tonight. This is so exciting for us because it's our first in-person meeting since 2020, and it's our first meeting at this location. So we had been meeting at Discovery Place Nature. They were going to close down, so I had to find another place. And this church has been so welcoming to us because over the past 2 years, even though we haven't had a program here, we've had 2 I Spy nature explorations here. We've been able to certify their property as a wildlife habitat. We hold all our leadership meetings here, either right in here or we use the picnic shelter outside. They put notifications of things we're doing in their newsletter. It's just been this wonderful partnership, and I'm just so thankful that that they were so welcoming to us. And we have no time limit as to, so if we want to stay and chat, we can. So that's really nice. So we are the Charlotte Wildlife Stewards. We're a chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, which I hope y'all are familiar with. And as you can see on here, and we're doing this is a hybrid program, so there may be a few awkward moments when we're making transitions or whatever, but it's a learning experience for all of us. So that little line you see there, there are folks online with us. And so we have a website, charlottewildlife.org, and we also have a Gmail address. So if you have any questions, you can email them to us. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. Ernie's great about posting things on there. All of our past programs that have been recorded through Zoom are on there also if you want to go back and look at anything. So our mission, being in Charlotte, there's so much development all over, and we lose so much every day, so much wild space every day, that our mission is to create, preserve, and protect wildlife habitat. We do it for education, like tonight, engagement, and enjoyment. You can see some examples by this one that we focus, that's Kids in Nature Day, which is all 3. That's education, engagement, and enjoyment. So, of course, we promote creating wildlife habitat in your own property, whether it's your house, whether it's your business, it could be on church grounds, really anywhere. And you just need to provide the same things that all of us need. They need food, and that can be natural food sources like oak trees, or it can be supplemental bird feeders or peanuts that you put out for the squirrels, anything like that. You need a water source, of course, because all living things need water, and that's really probably that's more important than food in a lot of ways. They need shelter to get away from predators, to get away from bad weather. And they need places to raise their families, just like we do. And the other thing that we encourage is using sustainable practices, which is eliminating any pesticides, maybe getting a rain barrel, leaving your leaves. That's a great one. Y'all probably heard about that. And there are just so many things that you can do with that. And we've got more information on our website, or you can go to the National Wildlife Federation to get more information on that. They have a great Gardening for Wildlife program. We can help you with that too. Okay. And then the other thing is, are you a member of North Carolina Wildlife Federation? There are some perks to it. You get information from them in their quarterly journal. They send out a monthly, I think it's a monthly wildlife wire that's a online newsletter. You get to be, you get to network with other folks that are interested in nature. And then NCWF is very active in Raleigh, working with legislators and, trying to, influence them and some of the decisions they make, especially as one going on now. Well, it's been going on for several years, called Let Them Spawn. And it has to do with the shrimp industry. They're so close into the shore that when they trawl for shrimp, they're also getting a bunch of juvenile fish that just end up dying before they're able to be old enough to reproduce. And so a lot of our fish species that people like to eat, people like to fish for, whatever, the populations on those has just dramatically decreased. So anyway, so that's one of the things. So we do get representation in Raleigh for that, along with many other things that are involved with the reintroduction of the red wolves in eastern North Carolina. So if you're not familiar with that. So, and the other thing is we run on volunteers. Everybody on our leadership team is a volunteer. We do have volunteers that come out and help us with events. So if you're so moved in that way, we encourage you to, to let us know. And there's no obligation for it. If it's something you're interested in, you've got time for, we welcome you. And if not, that's fine too. But we've done some creek cleanups, some tree plantings, and they're really a lot of fun. So we are a nonprofit and we run on donations. And one of the ways that we raise funds is through our Wild on the Water fundraiser. It's a really fun event. We have use of some of the kayaks and canoes from Parks and Rec, and it's up on Mountain Island Lake at Latta Nature Preserve. I don't know if y'all have been there. It's a really cool place. And so we go out. It starts about 9. We go out about 10 o'clock. Paddle out to an osprey nest, and we have a naturalist that talks about the ospreys. He talks about the other animals out there, water quality, the things that grow out there. And then we paddle into a cove that's full of water lilies, dragonflies, and all kinds of really cool stuff. We go back. Once we get back, we have lunch. A nice lunch that's donated by Common Market. And then we have a raffle. And our grand raffle prize, we have a few of them actually this year. We have an inflatable stand-up paddleboard from Great Outdoor Division. We have a 3-night stay at an Airbnb in Bryson City. I think, what was the third one? It was rafting, and we have rafting tickets for Coney. So, and then those are the big, the grand prizes. But then we have other really good things, lots of gift certificates to nice restaurants and just some other fun things. So anyway, if you're interested in that, it's the sign up link is on our Facebook page. You just have to look for, or you could go to the Wild on the Water Facebook page. We also have some information on the back table if you're interested in that. Let's see. And then just quickly, a couple things we have coming up on Saturday. This is one of the things we do. We're going to be at Winterfield Gardens Dozen Years of Digging. So this is a community garden right by the Winterfield Elementary School, and it started 12 years ago. And they're having this really big festival over there, and we're one of the groups that they invited. And our activity is going to be making nesting balls for birds. We have mesh bags, alpaca fiber. You kind of stuff them and tie them all up, and then you go hang them in your yard, and the birds will come and pull tufts of that out to use in their nests. So we'll be doing that at Winterfield on Saturday. And then on May 22nd, we're having one of our I Spy Nature walks. Sometimes they're meanders. We like them to be an exploration. That will be at Winghaven. And if y'all aren't familiar with Winghaven, it's a bird sanctuary in the heart of Myers Park that started in the 1920s, I believe. And it covers about 3 acres. And of course, not just birds live there, all kinds of there. So that's going to be really fun. And we do have a sign up for the sign up genius for that. So if you know you're going to come, it would be nice to let us know, but it's not required that you sign up. And then the main event for tonight, of course, is talking about our snakes. So we're welcoming Shem and Shannon Unger, two of my favorite snake people. So I'm going to have to read this because there's a lot on here. So Dr. Shem Unger is an associate professor of biology at Wingate University. He obtained his PhD from Purdue University in wildlife genetics, followed by a postdoctoral research position at the University of Georgia's Savannah River Ecology Laboratory. Dr. Unger has worked in a variety of non-academic positions as a research biologist, including working for the U.S. Geological Survey on amphibian populations, the California Fish and Game on salmon surveys, and the Forest Service working on northern spotted owls. Get around. His active research, he pursues active research. See, I lost my place. It involves collaboration with state agencies, tribal agencies, and colleagues from other universities, as well as providing opportunities for undergraduates to engage in research projects at Wingate University. He has over a decade experience studying Eastern and Ozark hellbender salamanders and has published over 50 peer-reviewed co-authored scientific publications, including several on reptiles. In his free time, he likes to play ukulele. You can bring that to He likes to go hiking and camping and spending time with his family. And Shannon currently serves as the environmental education supervisor at Cabarrus County Active Living in Parks, where she shares her passion for the environment with her community. She received her master's in biology from Missouri State University and her master's in education from Southern Oregon University. Another traveler. She's worked in the environmental science field for over 20 years at public schools, colleges, nature centers, science centers, and parks. And in her free time, she rehabilitates injured and orphaned wildlife, does Pilates, hikes, and camps with her family. So we're really excited that Shem and Shannon have helped us out with some other activities, and we're just really excited to have them here. Oh, and let's save our questions till the end. And then since we're also online, there may be a few in the chat that we'll get to those at the end also. And anything that comes in online we'll read out, and any of your comments we'll repeat so that everybody can hear.
So just close out, I suppose. You share it.
Well, thanks again for that great intro. So I'm excited to see everybody. So Shannon and I, obviously, an introduction, we love science. We love sharing our science with everyone else too, so community. And I know we titled this initially Snakes of North Carolina, but we'll just focus on Snakes of Piedmont. That's kind of where we are geographically. So that's who we are once again here. And so we'll be talking about snakes. And so we sort of have moved around a lot, and we have a passion for not just reptiles, but all other kind of animals too. So, and we try to incorporate our kids that are here today in the back as well. They help us do turtles and snakes as well. And I mostly teach biology at Wingate University, but I always have a lot of outdoor labs. I do a lot of research with my undergrad students too. More recently with snakes, and mostly I've been focusing a lot the last couple of years on Eastern Hellbender salamander. It's kind of a cool salamander, so I just want to get a plug for that.
That's a great.
It is a great.
Do you want to turn it back?
Oh.
Have you been living under a rock? I feel like I did a quick plug in. I'm also with the Matthews chapter. I didn't say that. Habitat Model stuff too.
So today we're just going to basically focus on what are some of the more common Piedmont snakes, a little bit about natural history, where the snakes are more likely and common to see, why are snakes cool and fascinating, right? They're pretty amazing. Not all snakes are bad, right? So there's a number of recent studies that have kind of shifted the emphasis of what we can actually gain from snakes in terms of what roles they play in the environment as predators of ecosystems, but also recent science has shown us a lot of really cool things. They're looking at snake venom and how we can actually use that for medical evidence too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And one of the most native snakes, and they're not all bad, what are they good for? And then we'll just, at the end of the talk, we'll have a meet and greet with outreach. Some of the herbs we brought today, we have live apples at the end, and then we can answer questions online as well. So I've become involved in snakes. Shannon and I have moved here. We've been here for about not quite 7 years, 6 or 7 years or so. And snakes are really great. We oftentimes take them to a lot of environmental events, Kids in Nature Day. We take them to school. So my wife and I, we kind of share the snakes, right? So better works. She has most of them now. So we do a lot of outreach, and then we also, I also mostly do a lot more surveys, and so I've started some monitoring projects, mostly near my campus at Wingate, which is a little bit south of Charlotte, and surveying for snakes. And so where do you find snakes? You find snakes in your backyard, you find snakes on greenways, and so you'll see a lot of different kinds of species on greenways around water, in your backyard, right, if you lift a log or a rock. So they do really well in a variety of habitats, whether it's sort of more a natural habitat or even some more urban areas. And a lot of times there's some smaller snake species that are sort of in the understory, kind of, if you go in the leaf litter underneath the pine straw, you'll find all kinds of snakes that are eating slugs and insects and worms, etc. too. We'll talk about some of those today as well, because they oftentimes don't get mentioned very much. But one way that that I've started surveying them nearby here in the area is by putting out cover boards. So you basically put out either a wood or a metal cover board, and you leave them out for a few months, and then a number of different critters, sometimes even frogs and lizards will also colonize them as well. But oftentimes a lot of because snakes are ectothermic, they'll basically try to heat up during certain times of the spring. And so they kind of gravitate towards usually metal, basically roofing. So you put out tins, and then you that's one way you kind of non-invasive survey for snakes. Otherwise, you kind of have to just kind of go out and randomly encounter. So that's kind of one way that I've started monitoring snakes recently, the last few years. Some of the species we oftentimes find here are garter snakes pictured there, or brown snake as well. So these are some of the smaller snakes I was talking about that are fairly common in the leaf litter. So they're out there eating insects, they're out there eating worms, slugs, snails, etc. So they're pretty common around this area. Also, some of the smaller snakes include worm snakes, which are really cool, right? So you found a worm snake the other day, which is really cool. Some of the audience have found a worm. These red belly, beautiful under. So smaller can get overlooked. So I just wanted to kind of show you that oftentimes if you do put out cover boards, you will see them. And they are another kind of part of the ecosystem as predators. You may not see them like the large black rat snakes you often most common see, but they are out there eating some of the other insects. Some other species include
Did I do that? I was trying.
It's good now. So other species include rough green snake. If you've ever seen the snake, it's oftentimes hanging out in plants, and so it kind of blends in really well with greenery. Really elongate snake, kind of a really beautiful, almost iridescent snake too. So rough green snakes, they're beautiful. And of course, here's a really bad dad joke, because I'm a dad, I can say it, right? What's the snake's favorite dance? The mamba. It's always a classic. Can't talk right now, I got a frog in my throat. So we can get advice from snakes too, so they're good for that. And of course, snakes are reptiles, so similar to crocodilians or alligators, lizards, turtles, and some other groups that belong with reptiles, so they are unique among reptiles. And of course, there's a lot of diversity and variation around the world. Like I said, we're going to focus today mostly on North Carolina, but there's just some other species that are really beautiful. Some of them have very different scales, right? So most of the snakes we have are colubrids, and they have kind of more smooth scales, but there's a lot of variation across the world for biodiversity of snakes. And of course, everyone loves snakes, right? So they've probably heard this quote here: "I grow impatient with these malevolent reptiles on this bloody aircraft." I'm not sure if that's word for word verbatim, but this at least gives you an idea of the typical perceptions and attitudes many of us have towards things that could potentially hurt us. Many of us have long-founded feelings on sharks, spiders, and snakes are among those organisms that are oftentimes you have a very strong opinion about, whether it's better, good or bad, the pros and cons. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of information on that. And of course, snakes have a very long history in various different cultures, right? So how we feel about snakes is really informed by a long history. Of course, it's interesting to hear the pet there, the large python. And you probably heard about some of the pythons that are invasive in Florida. They're causing a lot of havoc there. They've moved up to the middle of Florida now, I believe. They've caused a lot of issues with the Everglades. But in general, there's a lot of different opinions and perceptions about snakes. We're going to see if we can sort of disseminate some of those today.
Sorry, I was trying to get rid of that bar for you, but
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll just kind of start talking about snakes in general and natural history, and then we'll kind of focus more on some of the more common species we'll see in the Piedmont. And so one is this snake myth here. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions about a lot of animals. The first one here, snakes are deaf, right? So that's kind of false. Well, snakes, they do lack external ears, right? They do possess inner ear bones, but really snakes are able to sense vibration. That's why we have the Beach Boys. I'm picking up that snake hears you when you're walking around. I'm not sure if that's how it goes. But essentially, you know, they can sense your vibrations. A lot of times you're walking by them, they know you're there, you may not know. So they are not. This is another myth and misconception. So the fact that all snakes are poisonous, and we kind of throw these words around a lot. You know, like you've heard of reptiles where they're cold-blooded. Well, a lot of times, if you're a turtle basking and it's summertime and it's 100 degrees out, or if you're a snake basking on the greenway on the concrete, that snake's temperature could be more than our temperature. They're not really cold or warm. But here's another kind of myth related to that misconception. At least for all snakes are poisonous, right? Well, to be something poisonous, you usually have to bite it. right? So a snake bites you, so it's false, right? So a small percentage of snakes are in fact venomous. The majority of snakes that we have in North Carolina are non-venomous. We'll talk about some of this. So just some different perspectives on snakes, just some more, everyone loves these cartoons by Gary Larson, right? So are snakes pets or are they pests, right? So we all have very deep-seated experiential or just myths and misconceptions about our feelings about snakes. So it's quite variable. So we'll talk about that today. So we'll talk about some more snakes in North Carolina in a moment here. And related to the venomous snakes, we have about 37 species of snakes in our state. It's a pretty good number of diversity there for our whole state, kind of divided by the eastern coastal plain, the Piedmont where we are, and the mountains too, where I see a lot more different species. But only 6 of the 37 species are in fact venomous, right? So not a lot of them are venomous. Kind of just something to consider in terms of how we feel about snakes, not all venomous. So just a little bit about natural history and biology about snakes. Of course, their major adaptations are for capture of prey, right? So they have a lot of really cool adaptations that allow them to be sort of the top predator in their ecosystems, whether they're small snakes that feed on insects or slugs, or they're larger snakes that are feeding on rodents, and even the invasive ones, the Invasive Pythons that are in the Everglades, feeding on deer and larger mammals, birds. So most snakes are able to expand their mouth with a very flexible ligament, so their lower mandible kind of has a flexible ligament. They don't necessarily disarticulate their jaw. What they do is they have a stretching mouth, right? So their lower mouth has 2 mandibles, 2 bones, and they're connected with a very flexible ligament, so they're able to wrap their whole mouth around, let's say in this case, an egg or a large mammal. Oftentimes you see those photos. They're pretty amazing. But there's a lot of photos I think that went around many years ago of a snake eating an alligator, right? So it was kind of an interesting photo there. Also, no eyelids, so snakes can't wink at you. So they can't wink at you like we mammals can. But what's interesting, if you oftentimes see a snake shed out in the woods or somewhere around, you might see that actually, if you have a really good shed, snakes shed every couple of weeks or months, depending upon whether they're usually kept in captivity or if they're wild snakes, the size and the age. But if you see a really good shed, they actually have a scale that covers their eye, kind of a protective covering for their eyes. So they actually do have covering of their eye as part of their shed too. So you can actually see it, that scale that's modified for covering their eye. We good?
Yeah. You might just have to live with the bar, guys.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Good. So a little bit more about their natural history here, and the photo shows them shedding. Typically, right, snakes are essentially really well adapted predators. They have hundreds of vertebrae, and if you bring the snakes out, you'll see a lot of them flicking their fork tongue, so they have a fork tongue so they can get direction. And a lot of them are able to sense smell via their tongue, so they have an organ, the Jacobson organ in the back of their mouth, which they basically, when they flick their tongue and they put their tongue back in their mouth, they're basically catching airborne particles, which is really what smell is, right? So they're able to have that fork tongue so they can get direction. So if they're following the smell of their prey, let's say if it's a rodent or a mouse walking in the woods, they're able to kind of follow that chemical trail using their tongue. So they do have that fork tongue. That's the reason they're able to detect smell. And you'll be able to see that today with the light animals again. Now, some of the snakes being predators are able to inject with hollow fangs. Some of them basically strangle their prey, or some of them consume them. So there's a lot of variation in snakes in terms of what kind of snake it is and how they. There's a lot of amazing snakes. Like I said, I'm excited about snakes. I'm excited about animals in general. I'm excited about snakes as important predators in a lot of ecosystems. But there are some other amazing snakes that aren't in North Carolina. Many of them can live in oceans, so there's examples of a lot of sea snakes that still go on land to lay their eggs for the most part. There's snakes that are in Borneo that can actually fly by flattening their body. So if you go on YouTube, you can type in gliding snake, and you'll see these snakes that actually extend their body, kind of like Matagium, kind of go out and kind of glide from tall trees. Some vipers, we'll talk about some vipers today that we have in our state. Many of them are kind of capable of detecting things normally, but also they can detect heat because they have a thick gland that the vipers have. And so they kind of see like the movie Predator, right? Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like the heat camera. So it's almost like they have an internal heat. So pretty amazing adaptation that some vipers have. And of course, diverse group worldwide, so there's over 3,000. A lot of species and diversity worldwide. So a lot of amazing snakes that we have around the world. So Shannon will now just. So Shannon will kind of take over now and she'll talk about some of the more local.
Sure. Okay, yeah, so like Shem said, we have 37 species of snakes in North Carolina, only 16 venomous. We're gonna look at some of the more common ones in the area. So the ringneck snake is named for obvious reasons. These guys are pretty small. We talked about the worm snake. I see these guys quite a bit in our newsletter as well. And I love our neighbor, Miss Erica, who knows we love animals. And she said, Shannon, I found this cute little worm. It's got a cute little worm tongue. I said, Erica's got a tongue. It's not a worm. It's a worm snake. Because it looks like a worm, but it's got a little snake cat. You can see. And there are a variety of water snakes. I was out with my kids last week at a camp, and we found a little banded water snake eating a salamander. It was pretty cool. And of course, I grabbed it, and the salamander fell. And it's like, thanks. I'm like, sorry, snake. I don't want to show the kids. So he lost his lunch a little bit. You can't see so well, but we do. One of the most common snakes is the rat snake, and we actually have one today named Billy Zane. You guys are like actors and stuff. That was one of our favorite actors named Billy Zane. We like Zoolander, yeah.
2000.
Garter snakes are one of the most common. I was told it was the second most common. I thought it was most common. Second most common. Anyway, garter snakes are it's a very common snake we see in our yard all the time. I never see ribbon snakes. I never see ribbon snakes. You see ribbon snakes?
Not very often.
But they're just a long, really slender snake kind of name, right? Queen snakes, I don't see them too much. I see more of the king snakes. Now, where do you see king snakes? Well, they're there. Yeah, so they're around. Now, corn snakes, we actually have a corn snake you guys meet today, named Ranger. And these guys are fairly common. Their color can change and vary dramatically from the mountains to the coast. And also, they're one of those breeds that like a breed that you can breed. There's a candy cane version and like a lavender version. So they have all kinds of different colors they breed for, but they do vary in as well. They all tend to not be pink or purple, but they do vary from brown. On the rough green snake, like Shannon said earlier, I was out with kids a couple weeks ago and we saw a rough green snake. And I was like, ah, of course I have to be cool. So I get them all over me. And as you know what musk is, they have this gland near their back end. And they kind of collect this musk that's kind of like poop, but worse, like rotting poop, if you can imagine from
It's a
eating.
stinky animal, very.
Yeah, I mean it's not skunk, but it's like they eat dead rodents, and then you can imagine we don't eat each other.
It's lives below my common time.
But of course, I had to be cool. I mean, I try to be cool. You know, these kids are like, oh. So I get them, of course he must be, and I mean, all those kids smell my hands. They're like, oh, and it smelled like that for at least the rest of the day. You can wash, but it takes a while. But yeah, they are beautiful. He was up in it. I mean, I walked right past these kids got good eyes, and he was just right there next to my head. I didn't even notice him. Oh, okay. So if you guys are familiar, Shem's more familiar with this top one. You want to talk about that one?
Oh, so if you're ever curious in terms of how to identify snakes, whether it's non-venomous snakes, there's a couple of resources you can just Google North Carolina snakes or first North Carolina. There's a great website for that where it breaks it out into snakes, turtles, salamanders, lizards. But then also iNaturalist is another great way. It's an amazing app. Maybe some of you have. It's a great way to identify plants, any kind of critter, essentially everything, and it works fairly well with snakes. You have a decent photo. What it does is it takes your geographic location and compares it to some auto ID where you are and what's visually similar to that photo, and it works amazing well with plants, and it does work.
It's freaky.
It's crazy good.
Yeah, like I have it on my phone and take pictures of it.
It's a free app.
It's a free app, and then you get a lot of suggestions, and then so like from plants to snakes to all kinds of birds, everything. So it's
been used a lot more recently for a lot of bioblitzes in cities and nature challenges too. So it's a great way to consider science.
So there's a little plug that we're not paying us, but iNaturalist is a really good one. So now we're going to talk about where we are at Piedmont, which is where probably most of us are. Now the rat snake is the most commonly seen. It's whatever is called the black snake. However, sometimes they're racers or sometimes they're king snakes. generally speaking, rat snakes are the most common you're going to see around here, back down here at the bottom. They are constrictors. So they're funny because even like the ones I have, we feed them not living animals. As far as I know, they've never been fed alive, but they will grab it and squeeze it. And they just think they killed it, and I just say, good job, buddy. But it's so like in their minds, you know, that's what they do. And they do, because, you know, people, when I crack kids, they're like, oh, it's constricting me, it's trying to kill me. Like, no, he's just trying to hold on to you. But they're very strong. I mean, so strong, sometimes they've got knotted up my arm, and I have to keep pulling up to get them off of me. And they can get very big. The one we have is maybe, but yeah, they can get big. I feel like we're talking about most things, but these guys are everywhere. I think they're this mire, seems to be one common. They're really cute too. They're bright little bellies. But you talk about the sharp pointed tail. You can do that with great.
One of the main ways of identifying.
But you know, the brown snakes here, they do. You mentioned about how they're not all nice. They smaller prey as well. Very common. I don't see them very often. They're out and about. You can see they're across the whole state.
Very common.
Yeah. And if you see a snake with a ring, you probably ring that snake. And again, a small guy with a pretty small little guy down the leaf litter again. The red belly snake's really pretty too, and sometimes he's bigger than the worms.
They're a little larger too, but one of the main ways to identify them is they have that stripe on the
That's definitely helpful.
But it's almost like you also took a paintbrush, because they oftentimes have three very faint dots right behind their
See
head.
it. You can really see it there a little bit.
And then,
I
of course,
could
their
drag
bellies.
it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, many times,
Are you talking about these spots?
Yeah.
Okay.
it's like so much like a paintbrush.
So, okay, kind of back in here with the garter snakes again, super common. I see these fairly common in my yard as well. They can be, yeah, I do see them quite a bit in the garden, and they, in like suburban areas, you're gonna guys can find them around under like one of the boxes. So we do have an Eastern king snake you'll be able to meet shortly named Elvis, for obvious reasons. King snakes are very cool for a number of reasons. They're eating rats, mice, things like that, but they're also eating other snakes, and they are immune to copperhead and some other rattlesnake venom, so they're eating copperhead. Double good. 2-for-1 deal. So these guys are great to have around for sure. I've seen them anywhere from fully black almost to like white stripes to yellow stripes. This is kind of the version I see around here, and pretty similar to the one you guys are going to see here shortly.
We have a female that we didn't bring because she's shedding.
Oh yeah, I could bring another shedding. They're like, quick, shed, we want to get out of work. It's like they're playing sick or something. I think we saw it. I know we didn't some of the pictures. Oh, so corn snakes are funny. Like people say, why are they called corn snakes? Because they eat corn. No, they don't eat corn. They eat rats and mice and such, and they're often found in cornfields. Also, if you look at their bellies, they have like the autumn corn, the corn with different colors. That kind of look. Unfortunately, because of their patterning, they often are confused with copperhead. You look here though, you'll see that they have like these little splotches that are like along their dorsal part, where like copperheads have more. People describe them as Hershey kisses down their side. I've heard them called bow ties. I've heard them called hourglasses or Hershey kisses there. And the copperheads have the wire head. Not the usual closed. Copperheads are going to have cat eyes or little pupils and pits and whatnot. The babies have those bright yellow tails. But I can see people are panicking. We'll talk about what to do when you see a snake. It's funny because I don't know if you guys have next door, like which is like the Facebook app for the neighborhood, and everyone thinks everything's a copperhead. It's a copperhead. It's a copperhead. It's a copperhead. So much that someone posted a while back. I laughed so hard. He posted a picture of a squirrel and said, "This is a copperhead." It's just really funny. I was like, exactly. Everything's copperhead. Everything's there to get you. So talking about venomous versus non-venomous here, we'll get into that. Oh, hold on. You're going to start to notice differences in the faces and the eyes here. I think there's some better pictures.
This is just quick trivia.
Oh, quick trip. Which state is #1 for snake bite?
Florida.
Florida. We win, North Carolina. Was it just venomous? Oh, okay. Cool. Okay, there. Oh, but is it number one for snake bites or number one for venomous bites?
It's number one for both.
Again, mostly copperhead, of course, and we'll talk about how to avoid this shortly. It's almost always when we're trying to split or.
Yeah, so a lot of other states, particularly out of western states, have a lot more frequency in reptiles. But oftentimes here it's North Carolina, someone is in the process of trying to kill a snake and hurting the head. I'm gonna ask them, what the hell is alcohol? Yeah, there's.
When someone says, hold my beer, then you want to give them a lot of space.
How do you become a statistic?
Yeah. So again, those are non-venomous, and here's a nice picture. So it kind of gets cut off here, but you can see their head is wider. But again, you're not looking. I try to point out that you're not looking at a venomous, non-venomous snake usually at one time. When you're familiar, you're like, oh, okay, I see that. And in your panic stage, you understand that you're like, ah. But we'll talk about what to do. But they do have the wider heads 5 out of 6 times. There is a snake that's venomous in North Carolina, not county, that doesn't have the wider head, but most do. They're gonna have mostly the elliptical pupil, except one snake I just mentioned. Sometimes they'll have they'll most have the pits, but again, I don't know if you want to get that close and personal. Don't worry about the fence. I can't remember. It's double or not.
That's correct.
But are you gonna flip it over? But can I take a look at the bottom? This is the vent is their bottom. So if they're split, then it's non-venomous. If they're not split, it's venomous. But again, we're not going to take a look at that. The most obvious thing is the face shape and recognizing some of the patterns.
And we don't recommend anyone really grabs it. That's why you get a photo on your phone. Like we all have phones for this, and we all have that power. And you have eye at it's pretty.
There we go. Moving along. All right, so 6 venomous snakes in North Carolina. Do you guys recognize some of these? Let's see. You don't yell out, but see if you recognize some of these. We got the timber rattlesnake. We have 3 rattlesnakes as a whole. This is the coral snake. This is the guy that like defies all rules. He is a venomous snake. He's endangered in the county, but he doesn't have the big head or the little elliptical pupil. But he's got some obvious things going on there.
Distribution.
Yeah, I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, so pretty obvious that something's going on there. We have 2 other rattlesnakes here. Now you can't really see, but the cottonmouth. I'm not going to argue with anybody because I work at the park, so I hear all kinds of really great stories about. But everybody wants to say they saw cottonmouth or Flormoss, and there we go. And they swear up and down. I'm not saying this. I tell them that this is not part of their range, but some snakes they move and they don't know here. Generally speaking, most cottonmouths are going to be your northern water snake, Venomous water snake. Still give them space. They are fairly aggressive, but most of them are back. Yeah, the pygmy rattlesnake, and then of course the copperhead that we're all familiar with. This is the only snake found commonly in this area. I have heard people swear to me
Yeah, makes sense.
from time to time, but generally speaking, you get your copperhead. And this is why I was talking about the Hershey kisses. Yeah, so.
This is one of the part of the state. Well, there's a slide.
Yeah, they just like them up, I think. Well, yeah, if we don't get there, then you can address that too. So yeah, the Hershey kiss thing going on there. Oh, you moving there?
I'm moving it kind of as needed.
We had mentioned, so if you mind, that the young snakes have that bright fluorescent yellow tail. And as they get bigger, they lose that. But the most common thing is the white head and the Hershey kiss pattern. Common hourglass butterfly, Hershey kiss, whatever you want to call it. What's interesting about this now? I don't want to swear to this, but I read not too long ago, I was pretty reasonably, it was Snakes, North Carolina, a little word that a lot of people pass out. That there was only 1 death in North Carolina. Is that true?
I don't know.
I was
exactly,
looking
but they're not as venomous as other.
I won't swear to it, but they're very, very rarely fatal. And I would almost venture to say they have 1 documented death. Don't hold me to that. Very rare. You still don't want to do it, so it can be painful, but they're not quite as deadly as everyone thinks.
I think the main problem with those, well, number 1 would be infection. with any snake bite. But the other thing is with the swelling, that if it swells so much, you get what's called compartment syndrome. And that's when you swell up so much, there's so much swelling that it constricts the blood vessels in the nerves. And that requires surgical intervention. So that's one reason they monitor. So like if you get bitten and you have swelling to here, they're gonna take a Sharpie and mark it. Because they want to see, that's what it was, and then if it progresses, so they'll mark a line time and date it.
Come back in like 30 minutes.
And come back and look and see if there's more swelling, but mostly it's to monitor that. And there is a drug called Cofab that they can give, that counteracts.
Okay. So then we have the rattlesnakes we mentioned. Oh yeah, they're also called cane brakes. Get the chevron from the letter background. Of course, they rattle. The rattle is say hand here, give me some space. So you definitely listen to that. Now there are some other snakes that mimic that. For instance, the rats, or like king stick, I'm gonna show you. Sometimes if I kind of scare him a little bit, like when I feed him, he'll start shaking his tail like he's trying to rattle. Now he's not rattling, but it does move. It would move like a leaf to the beginning, which is kind of a warning.
It would mimic that sound.
Yeah. See, so they're not very commonly here. You do see them in both mountains and the plains. The cottonmouth, again, I believe it gets its name from its white mouth. Very good. So, often called water moccasin. They're fatties. You see them in the water. I always when you see them, I'm sorry, they're very muscular. They're big. they're my kids would say they're big. They're big. Actually.
Let me mute this.
Actually, no.
Oh,
I see what you're saying. But yeah, mostly there are the water snakes, the Venomous waters, the northern water snakes. I know it's just not a good place to start. If you see here, this is a pretty good show. You can see the head of the cottonmouth is much wider. Again, it's easy to look when you're looking at two next to each other. But this guy actually has people. Interesting. But they tend to have the wider head here again. They're going to have the elliptical pupil. But again, I always tell the kids, they do stuff big and whatnot. I'm just like, anything in the water gives space. Because water snakes, not that they're jerks, but they can be pretty aggressive, and their bite can be a little more painful than you would like to endure.
And something else that you be careful. Most of the water snakes we have around here, the water snakes will do is you approach them and they'll flatten their head, so they kind of fake you out and make you think that they're venomous, but they're actually not. So similar to the moving tail of the beast.
They're sassy.
So what do you think, what would be incorrectly identified as cottonmouth? I was taking children on a tour at on Shamrock Drive, there's a spring house, and there's a stream going in. I get ready to go into the spring house, we were right back to the water, and talk about that. Through the water comes like 5 or 6, and I thought they were cottonmouth. So I sent the teacher a video.
Yeah.
But they said, no, they're water snakes. It looks like.
It looks
I mean, they do, yeah.
They
look
do.
very similar.
But that's that
That's a good picture.
that coloration.
Mine's not perfect.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, they're showing the head here. Okay.
So they are very difficult to tell.
They are. I mean, you can tell the head there too, but I mean, when in doubt, just stay away. But they can be pretty difficult, especially in the water.
The cottonmouths have a really bad reputation, sort of like a grumpy snake. But there was a study where I used to work where a professor went and he basically made a fake arm and a fake leg, and he started grabbing wild snakes, right? Wild water mouse, cottonmouths, and then only 1 out of 10 would actually swim. The majority of them would most of the time, it's taking food and trying to get to point B. But you know, they have that bad reputation, so they basically had a fake arm and starts grabbing them vigorously, and then only a few of them actually swim. So they get a bad rap, but they are venomous.
Study. So as you can see, we are right here. Yeah, we're right here. So they're not generally in a range. However, we have a problem with that. This is a part of the range.
But the state of North Carolina does get a lot of calls, you know, on or lake, you know, and then it's all water moccasin. 99% of the time, it's usually they do look very
They do. I mean, yeah.
similar. So here, these are all water snakes. So brown and abandoned, and we have most of the water.
Yeah. Okay, so the coral snake here, unfortunately, I was going to bring, I was going to bring Coconut, which is the Scarlet Snake. Now, but she shed. Shedding today. But they do look, I mean, very similar to the coral snake. You know, the coral snake is just down here. It's not in our county. They are endangered. So the likelihood of seeing them is very, very small. But you probably heard the red next to yellow. Okay, so like here you see red next to yellow, little fellow. Heard of fellow.
Mm.
And then red next, if I had the other one, would be red next to black, friend of Jack. So the red touches the yellow, it's a coral snake. Red next to black, it's a scarlet king snake. They're very rare. I mean, like unlike.
Are they in South Carolina as well?
I would imagine
Yeah,
it's
they
like
said-
10
they
down in
said-
there, yeah.
They're very rare in our state, they actually are state endangered, so they're more in the coastal.
I thought as it goes down into,
But their numbers have gone down a lot.
and there's some other snakes like some different here. Yellow.
Sorry.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Another picture right next to yellow. And then there's a lot of other mimics too. Now, the Scarlet Snake, the Scarlet King Snake, the Scarlet Snake, what do you find that?
So they're here as well, but they're not coming. They've been split out. But they're a great way to sort of look at how if one species has bright coloration, usually in nature, whether it's a butterfly, or a snake, or a frog, if it has a bright coloration, it sort of usually means I might hurt you or I might take you.
Don't touch.
So there's anytime you have animals that have that bright color, you're going to have animals that kind of take advantage of all alongside those that are either venomous or distasteful too. So the scarlet snake and the cake snake are good examples.
So let's say if Coconut was Shannon would have brought her, but then you have the red next to black, friend of Jack. So that would be the non-venomous one. Makes me think right now people are maybe notice that we're getting the monarchs back, and you have that visceral one, which looks identical to monarch. And I guess this was delicious, but monarchs are not, so they mimic them. And I guess they are venomous because or somewhat poisonous. This tastes
No,
from the milkweed, but anyway, they're trying to trick everybody. Is this you?
that's.
Are you coming back? Oh, I'm still going? Okay. Leave them alone. Obviously, leave them alone. Give them space, especially if you don't know snakes. One thing, so most snake bites happen when you're trying to kill them, but another thing that happens sometimes is go walk in and tall grasses and flip-flops. You know, you can step on them. They still usually try to, you know, not. Well, there's two things. Sometimes snakes will move and sometimes they freeze. So if they move away when you're coming, sometimes they'll freeze so you don't see them. Then you step on them, they bite you. So that can happen too. So if you're obviously you go walk in tall grasses, we can't see the ground or be litter, you'll be wearing some thick boots and such.
And most of the time, you know, snake is like I mentioned earlier, snake is trying to get from point A to point B and you just have to get in his way. So, you know, say, oh, that snake was chasing me. Well, probably wasn't chasing you, it was probably just trying to get on the other side. Kind of leave them where they are.
Yeah.
Take a photo far away. Remember what it is.
Another thing to point out too is people love every time they come. So I used to from all the time. They're like, "Can I put the snake around my neck?" I always put snakes around my neck. They want to be around my neck. They don't really want to be around my neck. And if they bite you, they're going to bite you on your face. If they bite you on your hand, even if they're not venomous, better be bitten on the hand than on your face.
Yeah, pythons and boas love sort of being on people's necks, but most of the snakes we have are
Yeah.
colibris, they're they're just more they like to put on your hand.
Yeah. I know it's kind of nice, but especially with the people, I don't want them getting. I don't want that to happen. And if you do get bitten by a snake, especially if you believe it to be venomous, don't be trying to get things. Try to suck out the venom. If you can get a picture or try to recognize the snake, that's ideal. But if you lose venomous,
You know you have a venomous snake when it has teeth piercing, right? So we're kind of like vampire teeth versus sort of a rounded, like most things just have.
their teeth are so small, sometimes they don't even puncture. I mean, it's just like a little tiny.
So I'm just sort of wrap it up today, and we can bring out the live animals that we have brought today. So I'll just kind of finish off the idea here that not all snakes are bad. So snakes are the good for, right? So I'll talk a little bit about that. As Shannon already mentioned, so we have species that are around here in the state of North Carolina and our Piedmont area that are actually immune to the venom. So it's kind of cool. King snakes and Like I said, we oftentimes see them maybe in our backyards or close to our homes, but they're often there. They may be there for a while, and if you see a shed, it's more likely that snake has already moved on, but they're out there feeding on the rodents to keeping those populations checked. One of the more recent kind of cool work that's gone on in the last decade with snake as it relates to snakes in general, relates to snake venom. They found a lot of different potential uses, and this kind of gets into what kind of venom the certain kind of space a snake is. There's a lot of different kinds of toxins that they produce, and venoms are very different at first. So they've actually looked at different compounds that is actually in venom, because when you think about a snake or any animal that injects venom, what oftentimes happens is that you're breaking down muscle, there's things that are going on, there's a lot of proteins that are involved, molecules too. So they've been able to study snake venom for a lot of potential uses for human health in terms of treating diabetes, looking at fighting cancer, gum disease. They've actually looked at that, preventing strokes, heart attacks, and stomach ailments. That's usually some kind of compound that's found in venom, not just administered itself. So kind of a lot of cool research is going on in terms of the potential beneficial use of different kinds of snake venom. So not all bad for that. What are snakes good for? Good gosh, what are they good for? A whole lot of stuff, yeah. So what are they good for? There's actually been some more recent studies where they actually would oftentimes make this connection where, you think about these snakes as important predators, but oftentimes they're eating a rodent, and what is that rodent? So they're eating what the animals eat. So they're helping spread it because they move around more so than rodents. So the snakes that, like the rattlesnakes that eat on mice, right? They eat rodents, so they keep rodent populations down in terms of disease, but also in terms of tick here and in terms of Lyme disease, they also, in a way, help fight Lyme disease inadvertently by keeping those populations of rodents in check. In terms of rattlesnake, they've done studies where they start making these calculations of how many ticks are on one rodent that they feed on. A rattlesnake in 1 year could basically help control 4,000 ticks. Right? So kind of how bats are kind of out there eating mosquitoes, right? They're kind of providing free pest controls. You can kind of make that connection with snakes for Lyme disease. And they've also been other research has also been looking at snakes as sort of seed dispersers. Because you don't think of them, they don't really eat seeds, right? They're all predators, but they eat the rodents, and so what are the rodents eating? They're eating seeds. So that snake will move on to another area, it'll defecate, it kind of drops that seed. And they've done studies with turtles, box turtles, and also snakes where those seeds are actually dispersed and they actually are better at getting it around once they've been passed around through the digestive system of snakes. So in a way, they're kind of helping to spread seed, but you would look at a snake and think that. So it's kind of cool for an ecological role. So what are they good for? They're very beneficial to the ecosystem. They're dominant predators. Most of them are harmless, as we mentioned. Most of them are non-venomous. They're interesting and fascinating, right? Of course, they're very super cute, right? Make little hats. You don't normally do that, but a lot of people do. As I mentioned, they've been studied more to help prevent diseases. They help keep rodent diseases down too, and sort of keep those populations in check. And then the last point there relates just in general in terms of snake. They're one part of nature. They're part of, whether that's some of the smaller snakes we showed you that are part of the ecosystem in the leaf litter, eating a lot of insects or slugs, or if they're the larger black rats that you're more likely to see, they are out there doing what they do, and they should sort of be protected, maybe left alone, take a photo, but they are a part of nature. Of course, they can also give us advice, right? Don't bite off more than you can chew. And so I was talking about some of the invasive pythons that are out there in the Everglades. There's sort of been linked to a lot of declines for birds and mammals. So you can imagine these kind of photos. Pretty amazing. Advice from the snake, don't bite off more than you can chew. So they're good for giving us advice. And of course, some of them are heroes, right? So this shows a snake risking his life to save that giant. I don't know what happened after that, but and so that's really all we have. And so now, thanks for inviting us. And now we just have sort of, we can bring out the snakes and answer questions. If you have questions online or questions.
Do we have any questions?
Just repeat the question if you don't mind, so they can hear it.
The what?
iNaturalist?
iNaturalist, yeah.
And you can always get a photo and you can download iNaturalist later. It's pretty amazing. It works 99% of the time, if you have a little leak in this area, like it'll tell you this leak it works crazy well for plants. It works pretty decent for snakes too. And at first I was like, I don't really like using my phone that much, and I started using it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's great. I started taking photos of everything. It's pretty cool.
Well, and then,
It's crazy cool.
and then other people will look at your photos. In some cases, other people will look at your photos, whether it's, I think it's probably some scientists that are looking at things,
Yeah.
and they'll either agree with you or they may correct, have a different one. And then they'll even show you on there whether your photo will say needs ID or needs whatever. And then if somebody agrees or whatever, it'll be like a research phrase. So I think some scientists are using some of these photos.
Yeah, they are. So it's a great way to do citizen science. And when you take a photo of something on 9net, it comes up and says, here are 10 suggestions. And then within a few days, normally, depending on what it is, 2 people will validate it. It becomes research grade. It can be used for all kinds of studies.
Can you talk a little bit more about the black racer that is also called black rat snake?
Yeah, so so the main differentiation between, the black rat snake is by far the most common snake that like to see. We didn't have a photo of the black racer, but I wish we did now. But the black racer essentially is more elongated, so it kind of has a more skinny body, and they are also kind of more iridescent. And they don't grow as large as the black rats, but they are similar.
If
One for yellow,
if you want to show
Yeah, so
the snake up here first.
The black rats.
Whenever you're ready.
Wait, it's on your side?
Has darts on the back side.
Oh, I can probably reverse it.
But as they get, not until they get older, so it's almost like when they get older, they can be kind of gray or dark color. It's almost like you took a
These are
marker
similar.
and kind of made them gray. When we bring Billy out, you'll see it's almost like someone took a magic marker. They
Let's be on this side.
become more long. They look very similar.
Get a little face in there. There we go. Beautiful.
So which one is that?
So, this is the black rat snake, and Shannon can bring him around, and then I can do this one. We'll talk briefly about that.
And I've got this facing you, so as you walk by.
Yeah, so we talked about, what snakes do when they're have their forked tongue, and they're flicking their tongue, so you smell in the air. So as long as nobody has any copperhead on around, we're good. But they are immune to copperhead. So even if you have very strong opinions on snakes, you're like, oh, I don't really like snakes, or I'm okay with snakes as long as it gives me, stays over there. These are snakes that you want to see out there in your backyard. This is this was collected in northern Georgia, so it's kind of a wild type. Most of the ones around here are similar to the one snake that we also have in Shannon, which her name is Charlotte, which is queen king snake, right? And so she's kind of more dark black and kind of stripes. So this one is more from the wild type of Georgia. So you can kind of see the yellow almost coming through a little bit too. But these super friendly, super chill snakes. Yeah, so this is an Eastern king. This is the one that's immune to the.
He's almost brownish.
How do you acquire these snakes?
We get them different ways. So we have people get around. Yeah, we have our ways.
I wasn't sure if they've been like in.
No, the best way, well, if you guys are interested in acquiring anything, you should go to these really cool reptiles. They have their reptiles once a year over at the Garter County.
Yeah, I think it's coming from June.
I think we got these guys from there.
I think we've gotten 2 snakes.
Okay. So he can walk around. If you guys would like to touch, you're welcome to kind of soft down their back. That's totally fine.
Yeah. And I can have a folder.
Elvis is a good folding stick if you're interested. And that's cool. Why he's doing, I'll show you. This is Billy Dang, our rat snake. He's a little less, he's a little more freaky. He's not bad or anything, but he's the rat snake we've been talking about. And we really tend to be at least less than a couple of years old. There's a lot of patterning, you'll see. They tend to have this pattern when they're younger, and then they kind of become more solid as they get older. Same. Generally, that's the rule. So these guys will see a lot up in trees and things like that when we're out and about. So I'll bring them around. You guys are welcome to pet them. Maybe not hold this one, but if you're interested, this is by far. He's just a little more skittish. You know, I used to get maybe the mountain right.
Will you do?
But
I'll get her when she comes back.
these guys all go to like 30. Yeah.
You know, I have to take pictures, get a good laugh about.
Shannon, will you show them off on the?
Sure.
I love their little
This
white
is
chins.
Billy, the rat snake. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pink snakes are great.
This is the rattlesnake.
Orange snake.
They tend to have the pattern of their.
When they're younger, yeah, they tend to get darker as they get older, again, especially every girl, but that's general. He's under 3, he's probably 2.
You guys work with that.
Yeah, I know they're, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know them very well, but I know.
Hey guys, this is probably a good time to drop off from the recording. Sorry you could not be here because it's kind of fun. But if you're in Charlotte, we hope you'll come to our in-person meeting.